I think it's evident that we know a lot about creativity. We have 30, 40 years of research. We know how to measure it. I actually do think we have some common definitions. I don't think it's so challenging for us to agree on what creativity is. I mean, I kind of use the shorthand of non-routine problem solving, and I think we have a lot of information about how important creativity is to a range of outcomes, from discovery to resilience to empathy, which is something that James brought up, this empathetic imagination. We have a pretty good idea about creative process. We understand creativity is not just one flash of insight, but it's a process. And we have exercises, as Bob's brain gym and many others have come up with ways to actually sort of help us develop the habits of creativity. So I think we're actually in shape. I want to make the point that I think social life is inherently hostile to creativity. So in spite of James's point, which I agree with, which is that we mythologize the individual genius and that all creativity comes from a social context and engages in some form of collaboration, social life is hostile to creativity because we have norms of acceptability and respect and institutions, and we have rewards, and we have routine social interactions which really favor conformity and order over that kind of edge of chaos. The edge of chaos threatens power. We know from creativity research that people's interests are served by being able to continue to do things they've always done and to do them well and efficiently. And challenges to those conventions are typically rejected. So I think the real question facing us is about is a politics of creativity. We understand creativity. We have to understand the political forces that keep creativity at bay, the institutional forces, political forces, and how we can push back against the powers, the entrenched interests that want to keep things the way they are. Creativity comes with all kinds of transaction costs. It's not efficient, right? It requires time. It leads to rejection. The male bird that gets rejected for singing too creative a song. It's cognitively difficult. It requires risk and failure. It doesn't necessarily support our careers. There's research that suggests that people who are perceived as creative by their fellow coworkers are thought to be least likely to perform well in a leadership position. Right? So we don't envision creative people as right for leadership, in spite of the fact that 1,500 CEOs say it's the most important competency. And because of these transaction costs, right, I have found that creating creative environments tend to be one-off phenomena because they take a lot of work. So I've traveled across the country talking to universities about the idea of a creative campus, and you will have initiatives driven by charismatic, passionate, bring people together to do things differently for a short period of time, and then everybody snaps back to the old ways because of the transaction costs. So the question is, how do we make it more efficient to be creative? How do we create routines for the non-routine? Because trying to do it as something kind of pushing back against institutions, against routines, against the normalcy of social life is so hard that we can't sustain it. I think that's the challenge we face in our society. The last thing I want to say, I think, for the day, that we have got to decide as a group whether we are using creativity as advocacy or whether we're really interested in creativity as policy. What are we most interested in? Are we interested in what creativity can do for the arts, or are we interested in what the arts can do for creativity? Because if it's the latter frame, we have to acknowledge that, one, the arts don't have a monopoly on creativity. We have to acknowledge that not all arts foster creativity in every context. When we're talking about advocacy in the arts, we refuse to prioritize the arts, right? All arts are always good all the time. Well, if we really think about this from a policy perspective, some arts are going to win and some arts are going to lose in some context. We have to be prepared for those conversations, or else we're treating the arts and creativity simply as another tool in our toolkit to get more of what we want for ourselves, rather than really thinking about what's best for creativity, what's best for our kids, what's best for the right context that our kids are in.